Hey, it's John from Tinderbox Arts. Today I got to do a tire change on my BMW R1200RT. This is the first time I've done this on this bike. This bike came with some tires. I don't even know what they are. I think they might be Bridgestone. I really don't even know what they are, but they're not very good. Anyway, the new tires will be Michelin Pilot Road 4 GT. The Road 5 is out now, but the GT version is not available, so I stuck with the Road 4 GT for now. And one complicating factor in all of this is the TPMS, the tire pressure sensors. And I did get some Chinese knockoffs, which I may or may not use. I gotta see when I get into all this what the story is going to be. But I do have those. If I use those, I need to register them with the computer on the bike. So that's something I have looked at, and I have some solutions for, I hope. But it is a complicating factor. So I'm going to get the wheels off, and we'll start the tire change. But then we'll look at this sensor situation as we go. No need to show you too much of this, I don't think. To get the rear wheel off, you got to loosen up the muffler here. There's a bolt here, and you got to loosen up the bolts down there just so you can kind of twist it out of the way. I took the caliper off already, the brake caliper, and then it gives you access to the Torx bolts right here. They're T50, I think. So we'll get the rear wheel off, and then we can start working on the rear tire. Ordinarily, I'd probably just do the rear wheel first and then the front wheel separately after I put the rear wheel back on. But because of the sensor situation, I want to be able to have both of the old sensors away from the computer, because I'm going to try to key in two different sensors. So, I don't want any interference between the two sets. So I'm taking the front wheel off as well. And to do that, there's calipers on either side. In the back, it's not necessary to take caliper off, but I wanted to take it off so I can clean it, get the brake dust out of there. In the front, it pretty much is necessary unless you can get this thing way off the ground. So got the calipers out of the way. I loosened this using, you got to have a tool like this or make your own. The 22 millimeter is the one that fits in here. So there's a Torx, kind of a set screw here, and then the axle comes out with 22. You can make your own out of a nut that you weld together with a second nut, or get this tool, which is pretty cheap actually. So that's all loose. Now the way I jack this up is I have it on the center stand, and then I just put a piece of plywood under the engine here, and then just a simple scissor jack under that. And it works pretty well, comes off the ground pretty easily. So the only other thing I did was to take the front piece of plastic off here. I don't know if it's necessary, but I think to get the tire, to drop it out and take it back out, there's not a whole lot of clearance under here, so I just thought it'd be easier to have that loose. That comes off just with some, excuse me, there's 4 nuts, or bolts here I should say, and then there's a little tab right here you have to loosen from underneath. So that comes out. So that's basically it. So now I can drop this front wheel out and start working on the tires. Just kind of trying to avoid there. It's on there pretty good. All right, I got the tire off the rim, but man, it was a bitch. It was a battle axe tire, and my son helped me, and the two of us just struggled for quite some time. It was a good hour, I think, to get that damn tire off. It was just so stiff, and the sidewalls were so stiff that you just couldn't get it over the damn rim. So anyway, it's off now, but oh man, I'm not looking forward to putting the other one back on. It's sitting out in the sun right now to try to warm it up. Anyway, here's the sensor, and it's this style. So, here's the valve stem, and it goes in like that. I think I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think different RTs have different styles. They all basically look like this. I think this is going to be my front wheel, and this one just has a hole here. This rear one is the only one with the valve stem kind of built in. I think some of the other RTs may be a little bit different. I'm not 100% sure on that. Mine's a 2012, so you know this series, I think it's 209 to 2013, should look like this. The other ones may be slightly different, but in any case, what I want to do now is, before I put a tire back on, I want to see which sensors I'm going to be using. So these are the Chinese knockoffs that I got, which look identical to the straighter ones that come with the stock wheel. And these have to be what they call it woken up. They have to be woken up. And I did buy a tool, a really cheap tool, which is not designed for this. It's actually designed for a certain series of GM sensors, but I think it may work on this. So I'm going to try that. But I think what I'm going to do is take these wheels, put them somewhere else, the stock ones, put them somewhere else far away from the bike, and then I'm going to see if I can wake up these sensors next to the bike using the GS911 tool and see if I can make these be recognized. If they are recognized and the battery seems okay, then I'll install these new ones, and then I'll have the old ones, which I can try to replace the battery or throw them out or whatever I end up doing. But I don't really want to put the tire on until I know, which sensor I'm going to be using. All right, I did this with the front sensor and it actually worked. So I'll explain the whole thing. But basically, this is the GS911 software. I'm connected to the bike computer right now. You have the opportunity to put in 2 sets of wheel sensors. So I have set A, which was the factory, and set B is what I'm working on right now. I already did the front sensor and it worked. Here's the rear sensor. And what I'm going to do is I'm using this tool, which is meant for General Motors cars, older cars actually. The EL-50448, that's the number you need. There's a million of these available on Amazon, on eBay. They're like $10 to $15, but they work on the BMW sensors. So basically I'm going to say learn rear sensor and click on that, and then I'm going to press this button to wake this thing up. And if it works right, like the front did, this should take a second and it'll come up success, or I'll find out that this battery's no good, one or the other. The front worked beautifully. That went quick. Yeah, I don't know, this one may be dead. Figures, because this is the one that took forever to get here too. All right, I'll try this one more time. We'll see what happens. All right, I'll show you a close-up of this in a minute, but here's the Chinese sensor that I got that was bad, and it was, in fact, bad. I dug the battery out, which was more of a pain in the ass than I thought it was going to be. And if I put a meter on it, I got 0.5 volt. If I put this is a new battery, and I got 3.3 volts. So it shipped with a bad battery. So now the next question is, can I make this new battery that I got fit in this old thing? Now I'm going to change the camera. I'm going to give you a close-up here. All right, this is always a challenge getting this in focus on camera, but I think it's somewhat in focus. So right here is where I dug out the battery, the old battery, and it wasn't actually this isn't soft, at least in my case. It was a brittle, hard substance, like an epoxy. I know I've seen other videos on the YouTube, and it's a softer material, but for me it was very tough. So I had to use a wood chisel and just painstakingly work my way through it, but I eventually did. All right, so this round spot is where the battery was. This is the positive terminal, this is the negative terminal. Now, the new battery that I got has, boy, is any of that in focus? Maybe that's better. The new battery that I got has terminals already soldered on there, because it can be difficult to get a good solder on a regular battery, not to mention you may ruin the battery. So the next question is, try to hold this, oh baby. Next question is, how can I connect all of this? And what I'm thinking about doing is actually on this negative terminal, instead of just relying on spring pressure, what I may do is solder a little tiny piece of wire on that terminal, and then solder that same wire on this negative terminal here. And then it doesn't matter if this has spring pressure, if it touches or not, because the wire will hold it together. And then from the top, I can do the same thing on the positive terminal. So I think I'm going to try doing that. But it does piss me off that, this thing literally came from China, and so it took like a month and a half. to get here, but you know, it shipped with a dead battery. So the other one is good, and it recognized right away. I'm hoping if I solder this new battery in and get it fixed up, then this one will recognize as well. If not, I'll have to, you know, reuse my old, you know, stock sensor. So anyway, so we'll see what happens here. All right, I got this, I did a shitty soldering job, but I can't see is my biggest problem. But anyway, new battery in there. Let's just see if this thing works before I go too much further. So I'm going to learn rear sensor. And come on, baby. Okay, so now this should, I'm doing this right now, so if this works. Sensor learning completed, son of a bitch. So let me just say okay here, and it should come up with the ID, which it does. God damn. So they shipped me one with a bad battery. Now after all that, I have a new battery in there. I have to figure out how to secure this. Some people put in, you know, silicone or other things. I'm looking at this and I may just tape it in place, honestly. I gotta look at that. But anyway, at least I have a sensor that works now. So this you can replace the battery. It's a pain in the ass. It took me a good, I don't know, a little over an hour probably by the time I chipped everything out of there. And the biggest problem for me was I can't see. I got my cheaters on, you know, but they're not enough. Anyway, I'm going to tape this up and we'll get going. The front wheel, this sensor just has a Torx bolt, and it just, you know, it's just torqued in there and sits there. So that one is easy. Alright, I took it for a real quick ride. I haven't scrubbed the tires yet, but the tire pressure sensors are working. The pressure's not what it should be, but we'll fix that. But it is working, so far so good. I think the takeaway is, if you can get this tool, which is available on eBay or Amazon, super cheap. It doesn't have to be this brand, that's a nothing brand. This number is what's important. Then that'll wake up the sensors and you can do all of this yourself. So now I have some new tires and I can't wait to take a for a ride.